Hi, Stephen. Thanks for joining me today. It's good to see you.
Well, thank you so much, Gene, for having me.
It's always nice to chat with you and pick your brain about what's going on. So, before we get too in depth about what is going on and what you're seeing, why don't you tell folks what it is that you're working on today primarily? What's got your focus in terms of time?
Wow. Well, we have a new program. My company, Invent Right, where we educate inventors how to take the right steps. It's a coaching program. It's a mentoring program. And we've had that program for about 25 years. But we're doing something new for the first time because, people have been asking me forever, why don't you do more? So we've stepped it up a little bit. We have a new program that we're rolling out. As you know, every time you roll out a new program, you have a few bugs. So we're trying to work out all the bugs. But we're just trying to help more people license their ideas to companies for royalties and making sure their marketing materials right, they're reaching out to the right companies, saying the right things to get that licensing agreement. So that has been my mission in life with my own products, but with other people's products as well.
Yeah, we'll come back and talk to that, about that in a minute because unlike a lot of the people who are in this space, you've actually had your own personal success. And actually, maybe we should just jump in and talk about that first so everybody understands. This is an industry dealing primarily when you're talking about independent inventors and small businesses and that sort of thing that has had a checkered past, to be polite. And a lot of people in that particular space, I think, are
Yeah.
pretenders. They this is the way you should do it. This is the way you should have it done. But they themselves have never really been successful at it. You, on the other hand, have been successful multiple times. Can tell us maybe, for example, what was one or two of your own personal biggest successes?
Well, I learned very early on that I wanted to come up with ideas. And I knew that I didn't want to start a business with every idea I came up with. So I learned about product licensing. I learned product licensing at a startup company, Worlds of Wonder, in the late 80s. So I've been licensing or renting my ideas to companies for royalties, from simple ideas to ideas that maybe aren't so simple. So I've licensed lots of stuff, over 20 ideas over my career. I've had some big hits too, and some that maybe weren't so big. So I've done the full gamut. I've had a couple technologies, a label technology called Spinformation that did very well for me. And eventually they bought the whole patent portfolios and we sold about 500 million labels. So that was in the packaging, which is a tough industry to license. But once you do, it's really consumables, which is kind of wild because the numbers can get quite large. So I've had a lot of success with it. I'm still doing it today, though, Gene, too. I have
Oh,
a
you are. I didn't realize you were still doing your own stuff today. That's great.
well. If you don't, you're not current.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
I,
But
I
but that reminds me of what I said when I led into this is that people don't don't stay current. They never work, but they never were current. A lot of the folks.
well, I'm the guy that has failed many, many times. I've had successes too, and from building prototypes to filing patents to litigating, I've done that as well. Today, we've licensed a product to Atlantic Packaging, which is the largest privately held package company in the United States. The product's called Fishbone, and that is a product that's 100% curbside recyclable. Basically eliminates the plastic rings on beverages, and you can see that technology today if you go to fishbone.com. And I have
Okay.
another one that we just did some consumer testing with the company now. So no, I'm still in the game. I think you have to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, because if you're not, then how do you really know what's going on? How do you know when things are changing? But before I go down that path, again, let me ask you this. It just popped into my head as you were talking about, you've had failures and you've had successes. I've had failures. I've had successes. Um, which have you learned more from, your failures or your successes?
Your failures.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree. I think that it's probably pretty obvious, but I also think in America, in particular, we almost romanticize failure. You know, like just hurry up and fail. So if you're going to fail, move on. And I think that's wonderful. But in a lot of the rest of the world, you can't fail because it's one strike and you're out.
Oh, well, yes, and I think for a lot of entrepreneurs that are venturing their products, maybe one strike and you are out. Okay, but with product licensing, you're not investing a lot of money in any particular product, so you can have a few hits and misses along the way. I learned, I think, the great, and I don't know if it was a failure, but it was a struggle. And that was litigating against Lego in federal court, right? And going through 3 years of litigation and then settling 2 weeks before it went to trial, I learned a lot about the slippery slope of patents and the words and interpretation of words. And that was a great experience. Now, Gene, at the time, I don't think I would have said it was a great experience at the time. We did settle 2 weeks before it went to trial, but I learned a great deal about that process. It was painful. Of course it was painful. But now looking back, it was probably the greatest thing that could have happened to me, because now I think I know how to write patents in a certain way to overcome arguments, potentially. Maybe how to work with companies in a way that they don't want to work around you. Learn that too. And how to write intellectual property or patents in such a way that they're more selling tools than protection tools. Because I don't want to litigate, because that was just a waste of time, in my opinion. So I think you do learn more from your struggles. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when I've had struggles in business, particularly early on in my career, I think I think we've talked about this. I was an investor in an independent record label once upon a time. And you want to talk about getting a master's of business, I probably lost about as much money as it would have taken to actually get a degree from an Ivy League business school. But, the lessons that you learn as you go through that process are just pay such dividends later on in life. And, that's always been my experience. And I always like to ask people what their experience is too, because I do think, if somebody says that they learn more from their successes, I almost think, well, if that's true, then you're not trying hard enough, or two, you're not being honest with yourself.
I think anybody that is successful, how do you define that? But anybody that's successful has probably failed a lot. And I don't think people really value experience enough. I think people want to learn it along the way. Well, that's painful. I'm a big believer in, it's not a patent problem. It's not a prototype problem. It's not, starting a business problem. You know what it is? It's a knowledge problem, right? And if you slow it down a little bit and really gain that knowledge, or build a team, or educate yourself some way, you're going to make a few less mistakes. And if you can bring someone on your team, I'm a big believer in having teams too. If you can bring someone that has that experience on your team, your chances of success are going to go, much, much higher if you do that.
Yeah, and I've always noticed that for independent inventors particularly, those folks who are inventing in a space that they really intimately know, whether it's through because this has been their lifelong hobby, or they're in the industry or on the periphery of the industry, they succeed at a much higher rate than, because every new parent becomes an inventor in the baby space. It's like, well, hold on, wait till you've had a couple, wait till you've gone through and you've seen all the problems and everything before you start inventing it, because everybody thinks that they can be an inventor in that space, and that's a really tough space, because not only is there the knowledge threshold you have to overcome, but there's also knowledge in terms of regulations. I mean, there's so many regulations with kids, and most people trying to become the new inventor for the first time don't have any idea about that. So they're so much better off if you stick to something that you know.
And companies know that too. When we start to work with somebody and they're in the trade, we love that. because they're dealing with these issues year after year after year, and they've come up with some solution that they use. And the companies love that information. We tell everybody leverage that experience when you're speaking with these companies because they know that's where the great ideas come from. So I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's without fail, knowledge is power, and that's not to say, and I also don't want to ever discourage somebody from wanting to get into a place where they don't really have that knowledge, but you've got to then be willing to do your homework and educate yourself.
Yeah, and there's so much information out there that's available today, right? I mean, you have a great platform. You provide a lot of information, right? And you've been doing that for years. I do the same thing, with all the articles and YouTube videos. I do believe you start with the education. Don't get too excited about what you have, okay? And I know we get a little bit we're over enthusiastic about our ideas, and then we make terrible decisions. I think you need to just slow it down, take a deep breath, find someone that has experience, that's done it before, and someone that can maybe guide you a little bit along the way.
Yeah, and that's been my one of the things that I found interesting about your approach to inventing and licensing is up until a certain point, it pretty much is the same path you would go on if you were going to start your company yourself and manufacture and sell, go overseas, manufacture, import, sell, and all that sort of thing. So there's no reason why you immediately have to make the choice. Certainly if you're a creative person and you're going to have more inventions, the licensing model is a great model to follow. But it really is so much of the same. And it struck me again when every time we talk, I pick up on a little bit different thing. But, it's so critical when you're starting a new company and maybe you're trying to raise money that you have the right team in place. And, so hearing you talk about that, even from the build and license framework, struck a chord.
I think you're also right in realizing you don't have to make that decision. In fact, I would prefer you look at licensing first, have a great idea, file maybe a provisional patent application to give you patent pending status, have good marketing material, maybe even a 3D generated prototype that looks wonderful, looks real, highlight the benefit, see if it's great enough, reach out to those companies and see what they say about it. Mm-hmm. Because that information, you're really asking experts their opinion, and they're going to, some will tell you, some won't. But if you do that, you might determine, hey, I do want to go forward. I want to venture it. Or maybe you go, wait a minute, there's too many problems here. I'm so lucky I talked to someone about it because now I'm going to pour all that money in something that's not going to work because it doesn't fit the industry, because of price point or some other thing. So it's gathering information at the very beginning to make a good decision. I don't think just because you can venture, I don't think you should. Just because you can go to Amazon doesn't mean you should. Just because of all the things that you can do doesn't mean everyone should. Starting a company is difficult at best. It takes time, it takes money, it takes all this kind of great stuff. And people, I think, are being fooled a little bit by maybe watching Shark Tank or maybe, I love that show, but still it's a TV show. Yep. Or they're hearing this success, right? And they're not realizing it takes a lot of work to get there too. So I just tell everybody, you don't have to make that decision yet. Investigate, see if you can sell the benefit first. My whole strategy is really simple, Gene. I don't want to do all the work on an idea that no one cares about.
That was what Edison finally came to determine, right? I think it was after he invented the phonograph, and nobody, it had never existed. Nothing like it had ever existed. Nobody understood why it was important or how it would be used or why it would be used. And I think that was the invention where he kind of just threw up his hand because he knew it was special. And he's like, I'm never going to invent an area where there's no market.
You learn very quickly that what I've learned to stay in this game long enough to be successful is that I have to test ideas. And I don't know if that idea is going to be that one idea that's going to work. I'm going to test it without spending a lot of money. That way I can increase my chances of success and maybe stay in the game longer. So I want to know if the benefit is strong enough for a company that says, I want to know more. I'm interested. Maybe that will tell me at that point, maybe I need to do these other things that do cost more money to really be serious about it. So I'm a big believer in testing with some very affordable tools to see if my product has what it takes to go forward. And that testing doesn't take a lot of money, but it does take some skill to get to the right company, the right people, with the right marketing material that really educates them quickly on the benefit of your idea compared to the similar products out there. You have a clear point of difference that's strong enough that they like to continue that conversation.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake a lot of folks make in business, in inventing, whatever it may be, is they fall in love with what they're doing and what they're interested in doing and what they have, so they go all in. And you can go, I think, all in with your time, but you can't go all in with your money. Because if you go all in with your money, that means that you, creative person, have one opportunity to succeed, because most people aren't going to be able to go all in again and again and again. So I am a big fan of, like when you're playing poker, you can't go all in on the hand unless you know you're going to win the hand, so go in a little bit, dip your toe in, don't not play, but dip your toe and then keep investing to the extent that it makes sense. And one thing I'd like to get your thoughts on, I've told some people, inventors in the past, that along this path, there may be times when you'll be talking to people who are skeptical. They don't know whether the market is going to support it. And those are legitimate questions. So what I've suggested that they do is, if you get to that point and you still believe it, and you still think it's okay, then do a production run, a very small one here in America, and you'll lose money on every unit you sell. And immediately they're like, well, why would I want to do that? It's like, because you're paying for a determination from the market to see whether there's anybody interested. Because if you do a limited run here in America of even just 100 units, and you can't sell them, then that just saved you from going to China, making 100,000 units or 1,000,000 units and shipping them back and failing. So where am I wrong there, or what do you think about that?
Well, you know what's interesting about that? When I first started out, I was selling things I personally made at street fairs and county fairs. And that taught me to test very quickly, because if I created something that didn't sell, I wasn't going to pay the rent. So that's why I've learned about this testing, like you just said. If I can go someplace and pitch my idea and it doesn't sell, I have a problem. So I love what you just said, right? Yeah. But that even costs some money and time, and some people aren't good at pitching and all that kind of great stuff. Mm-hmm. But you have to have some mechanism to test a little bit, right?
Right.
I wish more people would do that. Here's what I always hear, Gene. I've spent $100,000. I've got a couple patents. I've got inventory in my garage. It didn't work. I hear that all the time. Or $50,000. I mean, I hear it so much. It kind of breaks my heart. What you would like to hear is that I'm trying to make good decisions, that I want to make sure I have a budget and I'm doing this correctly. Yes, I don't hear that too often. I hear the other side of it. So
yeah, and so often they have spent so much money with operators who are just, there is an underbelly to this industry, and people always, I think the reason they fall for it is they are expecting that the person who's going to rip them off, quote unquote, will be the person who steals their great idea. And it's like, that just never happens. The underbelly survives because mm-hmm. they convince you that something that is marginally interesting, or maybe not at all interesting, is the best thing since sliced bread. And oftentimes you've gotten no positive feedback from your friends and family. Then you get that positive feedback for the first time, and the checkbook just opens.
Well, that's tough. I do think there's an industry that can take advantage of people because of because of that. And they're there. And it comes in many different forms because they're going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. And once they do that, you're kind of hooked. And before you know it, it probably doesn't have the same results that you're looking for. So that's been going on for years. We both know that. That's been around for years.
Yeah.
And it comes in different forms. I tell everybody, there's just red flags for me. One red flag is if you reach out to someone and they're chasing you, they're telling you how great your idea is, that's a red flag. If someone is not on social media, that's probably a red flag. If someone doesn't have products that are currently that you can buy on the market today that they've helped, that's probably a red flag. If they're running ads everywhere, now I don't want to poo-poo all the ads, but if you're finding ways to capture people with the certain things they do to attract your attention, that's probably a red flag. So just
because reputable people don't need to use clickbait.
Well, you don't, but it's interesting because I've been dealing with that group for a long time, and it comes in many different forms. I just say everybody kick the tires, ask a lot of questions, get referrals, don't rush.
Right, and ask people who've been there before. I mean, there's a lot of great inventor groups all across the country. I know you run a national group that you still have that you guys meet online through Zoom.
Sure do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great local groups as well. And the old timers who have been members of these groups for a long time, they know who's legit, they know who's not legit, and it's not to say that they might not know a new company or a new attorney or a new player. But if they don't know the person, then that should be at least a yellow flag waving and say, okay, now you got a lot more questions you got to ask. And they could also just save you so much time by telling you, okay, you can't do business with that group.
Usually when someone pressures you to do something quickly, that's really the telltale sign. Right? And if you don't do this quickly, you're going to lose this opportunity.
Right? That's all through life, right? Right. I mean, the guy who comes to your door and says, "Hey, I can pave your driveway, but I need to know like right now by 4 p.m." It's like, okay, sorry, not interested.
Yeah, and I do think hopefully that's changing because there is a lot of good information out there. But they're very good at it, and they have been good at it for many years. And I think overall, I just think you need to slow down.
Well, I used to write about that, as you know, and I stopped writing about it, not because I got sued. I wrote about it even after I got sued. I was speaking at an inventor group, a really large one in Manhattan. You've probably been up to that group before. Very active group. And I was talking about, the beware speech, the beware portion of my presentation. And then I don't know why I did this, but I just asked the group, like, if I told you that working with this company, you had no better than a 1 in 3,000 chance of making more money than you spent, how many in this room would think that you're the one? And Stephen, every hand went up. And when I saw that, I thought to myself, well, there's nothing I can do and say because that's how they can exist. Because everybody, and it's, God bless inventors. You have to be optimistic and you have to have perseverance and you got to never die attitude. But, when it's 1 in 3,000 and with some of these companies is even worse than that. I just don't know what you can tell people to get them to understand.
Well, you've told that story before to me, and I think I've repeated it maybe 1,000 times already, because it doesn't matter what you say; they're going to believe what they want to believe, and they're going to be that 1%, and you cannot convince them otherwise. So, I do believe that what we try to do, Gene, we try to bring a community together of like-minded individuals that people really care and just share experiences. And you're right, once you find a group that really kind of cares about you, and those inventing groups do that. That's what's really great about them. Then they're going to tell you things to kind of avoid. But it all starts with just not having enough information.
Yeah,
And
that's why I like your model because you have coaches, a lot of coaches, and your coaches, the ones that I've interacted with, seem to, they really care, and they also have had successes themselves. These are not just people you've hired off the street and given them a script. These are people who are successful at licensing products themselves. And I always, when I have like the elevator, tell me what does Steven do? Because a lot of people know, you and I we've been friends for years. I'm like, probably the best way to describe it is like Weight Watchers for inventing. Because you have a bunch of people who know what they're doing,
yeah,
helping these people along,
that's
and
right.
then encouraging them. Like, okay, you said last week you're going to do X. Did you do X? And following up with them, and
Oh,
and then also just being there to be a resource when they have questions or they need a little bit of encouragement, and you provide all kinds of knowledge and information. I think it's a great model. It,
well, Gene, it's not. It's. I'm glad you said that because it's very much like that. We know that personality needs someone to hold your hand. We know that personality is going to get discouraged. They're going to need to be guided. They need to show up. So we have a program that if we don't hear from one of our members, we call them because we know they're slipping off the raft. So
yeah,
we know that personality. So we keep them focused and we keep them in the game long enough for things to happen because we have a bottom line. It's really our bottom line is so simple. We want for you to get your product in front of the right companies with the right people with the right marketing material to give you a chance of success to license your idea. And if we cannot do that, we have failed. So it's really clear that the coaches have to do, and the coaches have that experience because they have done it before and they know the problems. They know how you're feeling, kind of. So they're remarkable, and I think they're remarkable because they have been there before, right?
yeah.
So I'm glad
Yeah,
you
I
said
think
that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I do. I think it works really, and it's in fact, I've kind of, I've been teaching this patent bar review course for a very long time, and I convinced PLI, who offers the course, that one of the things, and this came about sort of as a result of the pandemic. In certain things you try, and some things stick, right? And one of the things that we did is we realized that there are people facing a task that get motivated and then they lose motivation and then they go off into the wilderness. And it's just to be human, right? Life gets in the way. So one of the offerings we do now, and we just wrapped up with earlier this week, is what we call like quote unquote an office hours course. So you get an assignment this week, and then we get together for 2 hours once a week to talk about what you did, give a preview of what's coming up next week, and then answer your questions. And the people, they love that, because it keeps them honest. It gives them, and then they all know, okay, well, if I do this once a week, I show up for 2 hours, then at the end of this, I'll be ready for the exam. And it works very well, that kind of a model, and because it's not overwhelm. It doesn't overwhelm people in any one sitting, and that's, I think, another problem with some. There are very good things out there that educate people in a lot of different ways, but when it becomes overwhelming, that's when the inventor at least gets lost.
Well, you have to realize that we're dealing with all these different personalities. We have 10 coaches, so we try to fit that personalities kind of together. Some coaches are a little bit more, let's get this done fast. Some are they handle it a little bit differently. But we have 5 days a week. We have office hours. Any questions that you have. We have an AI bot that if you have any questions, you can get it answered any 24 hours a day. So we have that. Mm-hmm. But we also have webinars all during the month. So you're never out of reach too far from someone. That's the catch. So you're staying connected, and you're staying connected with people that have your best interest. And which is really kind of interesting too. Our success is really tied to their success. And the only way for people to get to know who we are, we do it organically. We don't run ads. So we need for that success to happen. It's not what you say, it's what you do. So we celebrate every success our students have because that helps us shine the light and share that. So it works, and it works extremely well, and I'm proud of it. But you are dealing with people, and they do get a little discouraged. This is not an easy business. They want to give up at times, and sometimes they're closer to success than they know it. We see it. We've been there so many times. So we just have them hang tough. You're going to get a lot of rejections. That's normal. We'll get you through it. Just hang in there tough, and it works. Yeah.
Yeah, it does, and I see all the successes that your students have. Maybe we should talk. I want to talk about that in particular because for the patent attorneys and in-house people that might be listening to this, there is almost like a two-tier patent system I think that has developed, at least two tiers, and there's the laws and the rules and the process that apply if you've come up with something that is potentially literally worth $1 billion.
Okay.
That is extremely hard, if not impossible, road to pursue at the moment.
Okay.
Because you're just never going to get these big Silicon Valley companies to pay you that kind of money. They're going to fight forever, and I get that. You know, when there's a lot at stake, there's a lot of fight to be had.
Yes.
So I think the worst thing an inventor can do is when they come to me and say, and this is being infringed by Google and Facebook and Apple, and they think it's great news because they know that the numbers are huge, and they don't yet realize that no, it's the worst thing you could possibly have happen because they'll fight you for a decade.
Yeah.
But then on the other side of the aisle are these companies that they have shelf placement, some of them in some of the biggest box stores. Some of them are the big box stores, you know, like a Home Depot or a Lowe's, you know. And if you're trying to get into one of those stores with an invention as an individual, you got a real shot because they need products for their shelves and they want to sell to the person who bought something similar but wasn't exactly what they wanted or needed last year. Now they got a better solution for them this year, and they're looking and they want to turn these things because a lot of those products, if you're successful, you'll have a longer shelf life, but a lot of them you get maybe a couple years. Yeah. So they're always constantly looking for the next thing. And that space is very active with deals, right?
Extremely active. I'm glad you really said that because we avoid some industries. The tech industry, we avoid that. That's just a can of worms. We avoid that. It's too difficult, and we know how those players play. And you're right. We're in consumer products that sell at all the major retailers. And I'll tell you, most products have a lifespan of about 2 years. So they're always on the hunt for new. So they're constantly looking for new ideas. And here's the crazy thing about it. Some industries would like to have an issued patent, of course. Some think they want an issued patent, but they really don't know what that really means. But all of them, if you have a provisional patent application, that's done fairly well. And I love your program because it is written beautifully, by the way. That's all companies need to see for them to say, let's go forward. So it's not what everybody thinks all the time, that I have to have this. No, you don't. Every company's different. They all have different qualifications. We have a program called Bridging the Gap where we bring on companies to meet our members. And I think we brought at least close to 50. And they come on and they meet the members on a Zoom call, and they talk about what they're looking for, and then you can submit ideas to them. Everybody's so dumbfounded how easy it is. Well, you have to recognize they need ideas from you. And most of them don't care if you have an issued patent because they know the lifespan is a little short. Mm-hmm. And they also know they're not going to litigate because that's like a whole nother weird world, right? So we're seeing all these ideas that get licensed with the provisional patent application, which I love. Now, that's not in every industry, though, but it's the majority of the industries that we're in. Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense because, as you say, so many of these products are going to have a 1, 2, 3 year shelf life. Even if you filed a non-provisional patent today, the odds that you would have the patent issued before it's no longer on shelves anymore is pretty low. But I think you have, well, one, you have to file the provisional because that's what people want to see. They want to be able to evaluate, is this real? And two is if it is going to be your home run and it's going to have 4, 5, 6, 7 years or more of shelf life, which sometimes you can hit that home run and it will be that, then they do need to have something that they can get
Oh,
patented.
we tell them, give them the option. That's the trick. Give them the option that if it's important, let's negotiate so they actually pay for it. But you have to have a well-written provisional patent application. We call it transaction ready, right? So they look at it, it's done in such a way that it has value to them that if they want to go to a non-provisional patent application, they have that opportunity. So it really works beautifully. There's a product that came up with one of our members. It's called the Whiskey Wedge. Okay, and I'm trying to find it on my shelf there, but if I can grab it real quick, Gene,
Sure.
because people ask me all the time, Steve, can you make any money licensing ideas? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, right? And it depends on how much money you're talking about. But I love this particular product here. It's called the Whiskey Wedge. And when it first came out, it didn't sell very well. And I remember the inventor calling me and says, yeah, it's not doing okay. But the next year it sold 1 million of them.
Wow.
Okay. And it came out to be, he gets about 50 cents. So just do the math.
Yeah, that's a pretty good return. That's a return that most inventors aren't going to see. That's a great return.
There's another one here. Let me show you this one here too. This one just came out. Now you're going to love this, Gene, because if someone had shown me this idea, I would have said, what is it? It's a keychain that has promotional area for your logo, and it's a fidget.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
When it
People
first
already
came
do
out-
that with their keys, right?
When it first came out, they sold 50,000 in a day.
Oh my gosh.
That's the volume they're doing. There's no IP, a PPA, right? So every industry is a little bit different. We get to see a wide range of from toys to back to school to pet to packaging to DRTV, a full range. So it's all different across the board. But you're right. If you have a product that does pretty well, great distribution, great company selling it, that 5% royalty, basically that's the average price that you're going to get. The numbers can add up pretty fast. It all depends on how many distribution points they have, and you can just do the math yourself. So
Right.
we get to see that and celebrate the successes our members have, and it's really cool to see it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's I like seeing them as well. And recently I saw you announced one of your students. He had some kind of invention relating to what looked to me to be like a foldable pocket knife or something like that.
Yes.
And he had gotten his like 60th or so licensing deal, and there must be a subtext there because it seemed like he must have had a lot of people initially tell him no.
No.
What was the
he's
story with that one?
Yeah, let me tell you the story here. He's one of our coaches, and he doesn't build prototypes, but he learned how to use CAD, right? And he's in the industry with knives, pocket knives. I mean, is that really an industry? I guess it is. I wasn't aware of it, but it's a pretty big industry, and it's pretty run by families, but there's some big players, small players. He's licensed 57 different types of knives to over 10 companies.
Wow.
All right. Okay. And now his name is on the knives blade. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Right. So he's found his little niche. He just does CAD. He doesn't even do prototypes. He does enough to show that he has a point of difference. That's pretty cool. And he's found this uniqueness, but 57 licensing agreements. I mean, that's unheard of, right? I mean, that's really unheard of. So, but I think that's rare. Gene, I think that's kind of rare myself, but he's knocking it out of the ballpark. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, you never know when and what you're going to hit that's going to be that success. But it's interesting that you say that he works himself with CAD and he does these things. I was just talking to a patent attorney the other day, and one of the things that I've recently noticed, I've been preaching, as you know, drawings in your patent filings for years. I just have never understood why people weren't filing more drawings. And recently, I've just been perusing the Office Gazette to see what comes out every week, and I'll look at some of the things that interest me. And I'm starting to see dozens and dozens of patents, patent drawings and issued patents. I saw one, I think it was from Apple, that they had 100 drawings. And I'm thinking, this is great. People are finally cluing in into why it's so important. And he said, and it's become so much easier because of 3D CAD.
Okay.
And you could rotate it and take images on all different sizes and sides and everything. And I think he's right. And do you think that somebody who's like a serious inventor, or maybe the person who has had a couple successes, a success or two, and it is still showing that they're creative and they're still moving, should that person, do you think, go and take some courses at a community college about CAD and how to use it and become good at it?
Well, we had someone on that had a program that's going to teach you how to use CAD, and they made it easier. They're making, with all the types of AI out there today and everything else, they're making it easier for people to get started in a lot of different things. I do believe if you're serious, that's a great asset to have. Mm-hmm. It is. He self-taught himself, right? Because he couldn't draw, he couldn't build prototypes, but he knew that the CAD drawing was all he needed to license an idea. Now, these drawings that you said to me, how important they are, I agree with you 100%. I always have. I think a drawing's worth 1,000 words. I also think a drawing sells, because if I have a provisional patent application and if I can tell a story where someone can understand it, it's a great selling tool. And that drawing, I might miss something in my application, but if I have a drawing that shows that, I think I'm in better shape than if I didn't have it. So I'm a big believer. I believe that if you write a provisional patent application with some manufacturing, I think it's more important than people realize today, in my perspective. Workarounds, variations, drawings, you put everything together, it really has value now. Because I call it transaction ready. And the person that coined that, I was at a conference with you and sitting with someone that goes, that sounds like that's transaction ready. Well, yeah, it is, because you can take it now and actually do something with it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Which is what they want. Because the thing that I think most inventors don't realize is that the people who they're pitching or they're trying to get to do these deals, they're not usually pitching to the CEO of the company. They're pitching to somebody who's within that company, who they have a job, and their job is to be successful and bring good products to market and that whole thing. And if they're not successful, then they're going to be out of a job just like anybody else is. So what you need to think about, I think, is what is the pressure that person that you're dealing with has? And one of the big pressures they have to overcome is anybody going to be willing to pay for this? So anything you can do to make that, close that gap, answer that question, make it more real and tangible is only going to help you with that person and understanding the stress and pressures they're under.
I think the legal profession needs to realize that these patent applications are selling tools, right? Because they are, right? You're taking away risk. Mm-hmm. Why should I invest? And I'll tell you this quick story. Someone came to me with the label innovation. That's kind of my specialty. And Gene, it was so simple. The technology of what this thing was going to do had been around for 50 years. It's common. Everybody knew it. And he showed it to me. And I said, "You got a patent on this?" He goes, "Well, yeah, I got a patent on this." I was like, so I read it. And I talked to a friend of mine that knows how to manufacture certain constructions of labels. And he says, "Well, Steve, you can't make it this way." So I called the patent attorney up and I said, "You got a patent on this, congratulations, but you can't make it this way." And he said, "Well, Steve, that's not my job."
Ugh.
Okay. And I think people need to realize this. And it's probably not his job, Gene, because, to be up to speed on all these technologies, how to make it the most efficient way, I don't know if patent attorneys or agents know that type of knowledge, because it's really current, right? They know some basics, which they should, and maybe they got their degree who knows how many years ago. So we filed a continuation on some of the ways it could be done, a little bit better what's really, So he ends up getting 3 patents. That's pretty impressive. On an idea, on the delivery of a label that's been around for 50 years, but not
Yeah.
the way it's been used. So I get on a call. The company sees the video. They absolutely love it. But know what they say to me? Steve, you got to be kidding me. We use this construction today. I want to use it, but what do I tell the CEO? I said, well, tell him this. Yes, that construction has been around for 50, 60 years, and you make it today. But it hasn't been used this way. Because have you ever seen it used this way in the market? You guys have been around for 30 years? And they said, no, we've never seen it this way. That's what you tell your CEO. And let me tell you where the deal got done, because that patent attorney listened to me, wrote a little bit differently, did a continuation. But you know what he did? He evaluated what not only the patent number, but he put together a document of what the patent covered. And I sent that over to the company. It was the greatest selling tool ever, because not only did they see the patent number, they saw everything it covered, and the deal got done. So I do think it takes a little bit of skill to get these deals done if they're complicated like that. But it starts with understanding your product, your point of difference. It's a lot of selling, Gene.
Yeah.
So
So the one thing I'll take issue with, I didn't, and I know what you're saying, and I agree with you, but I don't want people to hear that in the patent you should write it like it's an infomercial. Because, I see that's another huge mistake I see from inventors all the time, is it's like they become like that ShamWow guy, but wait, there's more, practically sells itself. It's like, okay, I get why you're going to use the patent. I get why you need the patent. And it has to answer these questions that the person who is either going to buy the patent or license it is going to get. But you got to be careful about not having, because people love telling you how it can be marketed. They love telling you that this is the greatest thing in the world. And you have to write it, I think, in a way that lets the reader come to that conclusion. You pull the reader along to that conclusion. And you just got to, I think, be a little bit careful, because you're going to use it for marketing. You're going to use it for selling. You're going to use it.
I don't think you use it as a selling tool of the benefit of it. I think you just tell a story that they can understand. I think you tell a story that they can experience it, they get it. I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And the drawings are so critical. As a patent attorney once told me when I was very early on in my career, they said that the first time that an inventor really understands that they've gotten something good, that I've come up with something, is when you've gotten the patent drawings prepared for them. This is back before, inventors were doing a lot of the drawings on their own. And he told me, he said, oftentimes you'll see inventors almost cry. They get teary. I came up with that. That's what I came up with, because that's how powerful the illustration is of a drawing. And now we can do 3D stuff. We can do video stuff. And it makes it concrete, makes it real.
It does. And there's something, I remember receiving my first patent. I was very proud, Gene, and I've gotten a few over the years now. I'm still proud.
Yeah.
Right? Because you do have to jump through some hoops, and you do have to, it's not easy to get, and it's something to be proud about. I'm really concerned about having that plaque on the wall produce some type of revenue for me too, right? So they are expensive, they're time consuming, and they have value. They definitely, I don't care what anybody says, patents have value. It's how you use them today, right? And I do believe if they're written correctly, and I think they can always be improved, and I love all the discussions about patents today, I think they're great tools. I'm a firm believer. I've seen more deals get cut. I'm still licensing ideas using patents. But it's not about the world of protection so much in my world. Now, you want to write it so it does do that. Don't get me wrong. But you also want to write it that it protects not only the invention, but maybe the innovation I got it. You want to write in such a way that people really understand it and they can implement it, and it's current and it's got great information in there to do it the most efficient way. So I think it combines a lot of different elements, right, to do it right. So it's really a tool now. It's a powerful tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And if you understand what you're doing and know what you're doing, you can really create something out of nothing. That's the whole thing that is exciting.
Well, it's amazing. There's a technology I'm working on now that, and people are always surprised, and I cannot tell this full story yet because we're not quite done yet. But what's really crazy about it, we're working with one of the largest beverage companies. We did not have a prototype, which everybody's like, really? And we don't have any issued IP. All right. So how do you get a deal done that way? Well, the benefit is so strong, you see it, that's the first thing you need to overcome. Okay, we like it, we see the benefit, let's go for it. Now, how do we test? How do we do consumer testing, or how do we do proof of concept? So you get over that hurdle. I mean, there's all these little hurdles along the way, but it does start with that magic, right, of thinking something new. Of something no one's figured out yet, or you fix something no one has really done before. And that magic moment is so powerful. I tell everybody, I'm hooked. I'm hooked on that moment of brilliance that no one's thought about this before. Now, how do I commercialize it? There's the other
Right.
hook. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the synergy, right? Is the inventor is the idea person can figure it out, but often that idea person is not going to be the person who has the skill set to start the company or to distribute it or to find shelf space or all the things about running the business is and our founding fathers understood that. That's why patent licensing goes all the way back to colonial days. I know I told you this before. I always like to tell people this, but the first patent licensee in America was George Washington.
I didn't know
And
that.
oh, you didn't? Okay, so so if you ever get a chance to go to Mount Vernon, go to the grist mill. And so back in the day, the president had to actually sign issued patents. So the third patent, literally patent number 3 that crossed Washington's desk, dealt with improvements to a grist mill. And he had the inventor summoned and he said, I want to pay you to install this in my grist mill. And he did. And it still works today. They will turn it on. The whole building like shakes when this thing goes on. Yeah. And so I always point out to people who talk about, people who invent and license are the scourge of the earth. I mean, you've heard all the patent troll nonsense and everything. Yeah. Well, if the man who we were willing to make king was willing to pay for a patented invention, then why shouldn't that be the standard? Why shouldn't everybody pay for what they're taking? And I just think it's a great story. I mean, the founding fathers knew inventors 80% of them didn't even have a high school education back in the colonial days.
You know what's
They were never going to be able to manufacture this stuff. They were never going to be able to start the business.
Thank you for sharing that story for me, because so many people don't understand patent licensing. And they think it's new and it's not being taught. It's not that common. And I usually tell everybody, I think this first sewing machine was licensed too. So I go back a couple hundred years, right? But you just went back a little bit further for me here. So I've got to investigate, because that's the story I'd like to tell. It's not new. It's been going on for a long time. And for a lot of people, it is an option, right? And what we try to do, or what I've been trying to do, is break down some of the barriers for people to show them that, hey, you can do it, and you don't have to break the bank to do it. Yeah.
And I still today tell people that if you're interested in doing this, in pursuing this as a path, your first assignment is to get one simple idea. That was, I think, your first book, right? And read it. And because I know if they're not going to read the book, they're not going to be successful anyway, right?
Well,
and if they do read the book, they have any kind of creativity, they should be hooked, because all your books are good, but that one I think is maybe it's because it's your first book and it's helped so many people. I think that that's a great contribution to the industry. Just
Well,
that book alone.
yeah, thank you for saying that. I didn't realize the impact that book was going to have, and I didn't realize by writing a simple story it was going to resonate with people. And it has. So I'm really proud of that book. Thank you.
Well, I'm always jealous because of you in particular, because you have just this gift of being able to tell a story, and everybody's it's hard to do, and to tell a story in a way that everybody's waiting for the next line, and that's the way you talk, and I think it's great, and it's also the way that you write, and it resonates with people. It's real.
Thank you. I'm so, well, Gene, I look at it this way. People ask me, why am I so motivated to do this? Well, I'm that guy that counted out. I'm that guy that probably wasn't going to be able to be successful. I was that guy, and I found a way, something that worked. And so I created a program for people like me that maybe needed some help, maybe needed some guidance. And it's worked out beautifully, because I think there's a lot of creative people that do need a little help. And to say that you can't do this or it's too expensive, whatever, I said, no, you can do this, but let's be smart about it, and let me get you in the game of it, and then let's go slow.
Yeah. No, I love that, and I always love our conversations because I spend so much time dealing with the part of the industry where patents are not nearly what they used to be, and they're not as valuable. I think we're going to turn a corner here over the next couple of years, but there is still, even today, even in this climate, a part of the industry that functions exactly the way it was designed to function, and people are being successful, and it's actually not good. It's a great story. It's the American story.
Well, it is the American story, and what's really incredible, if you look at Time Magazine inventions of the year or something, most of those are simple consumer products. Mm-hmm. And I saw that, and I was really proud to see all that. And because it doesn't have to be earth-shattering, it doesn't have to be the next cure for something. It could be simple things that impacts people's lives. So that's the world I'm in, and it works beautifully. So when people complain about the patent system, like, wait a minute here. Right, there's always two sides to every story, so let's make sure we're telling both sides of the story a little bit. Yeah,
absolutely, and thank you so much for joining me today to tell that side of the story. I don't think we tell it often enough, and we should visit more often. It's good to talk to you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Gene. Anytime. Thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate it.